EdTech Mondays Uganda is supported by the Mastercard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning and the Innovation Village. Sub-Saharan Africa may have the world's fastest growing population, but only 8% of its children are going to university. Nearly 20% are at a risk of exclusion from education by 2030, and that affects the quality of education. But the pandemic brought with it chances for expansion of EdTech on the continent with models like online learning and hybrid learning. Today on EdTech Monday, we look at the opportunities that are provided in hybrid learning and how governments and the private sector can take advantage of them. Welcome to EdTech Monday, and thank you so much, our guests, for making time for us. I think we'll start with introductions with you, Richard.
Thank you so much, Raymond. My name is Richard James Mukaga. I work with government at the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance. The Ministry of ICT deployed me at the Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries, where I head the ICT function. We, as ICT, support the agriculture value chain, right from the identification, profiling of farmers, up to how they manage to get their produce to the market. In a nutshell, that is what we do at the Ministry of Agriculture. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much, Richard. Paula.
Thank you. My name is Paula Mugisa. I am the founder at TESA. We are an EdTech skilling marketplace focused on enterprise. And so what we do is we aggregate all kinds of skilling, information, resources, courses, coaching programs all around business in the African context by African business experts, career professionals, and we put them all onto one place so that we can upskill the young African adults so that they can contribute meaningful value into the marketplace and earn a sustainable income. So the problem that we're trying to solve is 10 to 12 million young African adults enter into the African labor force every single year. Whilst the whole entire African economy only accounts for 3 million jobs. And so we believe that if we can upskill the young African adult, and the person upskilling the young African adult is African and has achieved results in our market, then they can be able to enter innovative products and services into our market and advance our economy. So that's what we do.
Oh, that's amazing. Samson?
Yeah, thanks Raymond. Thanks for hosting me on this episode of EdTech Mondays. My name is Samson Wambuzi, and I'm the co-founder of YIA Solutions. YIA is an EdTech organization that provides skills-based experiential STEM education to young people who live in last-mile populations, who live in rural communities across the country. We teach them through a virtual classroom called YIA Air Science, and YIA Air Science is it mimics an online class, but learners do not need the internet or smart devices to participate and engage with our content. Instead, they need only a radio and basic keypad phones, because these are the tools that most Ugandans have access to. Before YIA, I was a curriculum designer at an international organization here in Kampala, and before that, I was a classroom teacher of physics and math at Mackay Memorial College in Natete.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. And Samson, I want to start with you. A lot of the people joining us today are probably hearing about hybrid learning for the very first time in their lives. What is hybrid learning, and how has it been deployed in Uganda?
Yeah, thank you so much. By hybrid, we mean the need to augment or supplement the current education system with a legitimate, robust, and possibly accessible virtual learning model, you know. And why is it necessary? The current education system is not reaching everyone. Actually, it's not reaching most people. And the hurdles that people face to access education have been here for decades. They were just exacerbated by the pandemic. 3 weeks ago here in Uganda, the Uganda National Examinations Board released the results of the primary leaving examinations for last year. And the data showed that out of the 1.88 million learners that enrolled in primary 7 years ago, only about 800,000 completed primary school. First of all, that means 1 million dropped out of school. And if you have to go by the current trend, it means that over 70% of those will not complete secondary school. And so it's very necessary to have a hybrid model, to have an alternative, well-tested educational model, possibly a virtual learning model, to help learners who can't access this mainstream education system be able to learn and also succeed.
Paula, if I could bring you in, a lot of what education does is equalize people's circumstances and enables them to get into the workspace. What is it about TESA that you've learned about hybrid models that gives that kind of education and equalizes circumstances for people like that?
So quite a number of things. One of the issues to the hybrid learning model is our internet infrastructure in Uganda, in Africa. It being expensive and not adequate to support consistent learning online in a way that's sustainable for both the learners and the people who are delivering the learning. And so one of the things that we're doing that we've realized is that hybrid learning models, in order to be inclusive, equitable and accessible, as the government and other key stakeholders support the growth of our internet infrastructure, is to have multimedia content. And so having content in video format, having content in audio format, having content in text format, having content in USSD format, like YIA Solutions is doing. And so there is an intervention offering learning for learners in whatever circumstances that they are, right? So someone in Kampala who has data on their phone, a smartphone, can watch a video, is receiving the same exact lesson like someone in Kiriandongo, except that they're getting bite-sized pieces through USSD. Another thing that will support hybrid learning, especially for our economy the way that it is now, is to have the same content translated into different languages. That's something that's going to be really, really important to onboarding and making people understand the value of learning, its practicality, and what they can produce into the market. So we have found those two things to be pertinent, and we're doing our best at TESA to make education equitable and accessible to all people through those two ways.
Richard, I can see you already got a headache when you talk about the infrastructure, the internet infrastructure in the country. And one of the things that government should be very comfortable with is the hybrid model, because then in areas where you don't have access to infrastructure, the hybrid learning model would work. What's government's thinking space around the hybrid learning?
The hybrid model presents a number of challenges. Of course, we have challenges as is with the current educational model, with the classroom block, 4 walls, and like we have all talked about the statistics showing how the population is growing so rapidly, and possibly we may think of having a population which multiplies what we have by 2 by 2050. Now, shall we have multiplied the classroom blocks by twice the amount that we have built over the period of time that we've existed? Possibly not. And that makes it inevitable that we have to think hybrid or call it blended going forward. Now, what is government doing, and what is government's thought around this hybrid kind of model? Of course, we saw when the pandemic came in, we saw how government grappled with the challenge and tried to put up a few things. We saw content being sent to students in their homes. Of course, it was not good enough. The thought was good, but execution possibly had challenges. We saw the president promising to buy radios for homesteads. Now that speaks to the challenges that we have. That one, we don't have the equipment. 2, she has just talked about the infrastructure, and here we talk about connectivity and other things. And then we have the problem of content. Content is key, I think, when we're talking about delivering a hybrid kind of model of education or learning. Now, of course, we saw government has done a number of things, but it is not yet there. I think we are not yet ready for hybrid, but we should continue engaging and finding a way of how this can be achieved. If you look at, for example, the levels of education, right from pre-primary, can you achieve hybrid learning with the pre-primary education? Most likely the answer is no. If you go to primary education, you can't. And where are the bottlenecks in education? They are at these lower levels. Of course, hybrid, I think even right now, we are doing very well at university level when it comes to hybrid, because I can say that most of the universities, if not all, are achieving delivery of some sort of learning through the online platforms. But at the basic levels, the most important levels, where the biggest challenges are, it may not be achievable easily. And we, as Ugandans, I'm happy that we are here with business development people and innovators like Yiya. We should continue thinking of solutions. Of course, even outside of Africa, the challenges, they don't have solutions which are plug and play and going. I've been attending a course online of recent, and every time they kept on developing. So we need to continue working, planning, innovating, and developing solutions, of course, and also working on our infrastructure and connectivity.
Samson, you seem to be burning.
Absolutely. And I want to first of all say, Paula spoke my heart when she talked about the need to provide learners with the opportunity to choose what language they want to learn in, to provide content in multiple languages. You know, so if I am in school and this teacher is teaching about solar radiation or photosynthesis and I'm not understanding it, maybe I can go on USSD and I check it in my local language, what it means. Or I watch a video and I check what it means. And actually, yeah, right, we are going to run a big experiment in West Nile this year, together with our development partners and most likely government. The challenges are there. Even with the level of digital literacy, when you look at the data, the level of digital literacy is still poor in this country, and then of course connectivity. But in education, we talk about the zone of proximal development. It is the idea that you use what people already know and what people already have to teach them and help them advance to a level of being able to do complicated stuff. We know in Uganda almost everyone knows how to use a keypad phone. I mean, that's how financial institutions and telecom companies have been able to increase financial access to finance, you know, for almost every Ugandan. Yeah. So why can't we repurpose that kind of technology to provide education as people grow in their skill set, you know, and advance in their digital literacy? And even radios. Radios are also a good tool. 87% of Ugandans have radios. Let's have this good teacher go on the station and teach. This good teacher should go to the station and teach their good content, and it goes out to millions of learners out there.
Paul, I wanted to bring you in on the matter of content. He mentioned content, and he's talking about the delivery of the content, the language in which that content should be delivered. Sometimes employers assume that there's a standard set of content that you expect of someone if they are certified at something. And that assumption is, of course, based on what government provides as the basic minimums. What can you and government do together to standardize that content, to make sure that if it's taught in Rutoro or in whatever language it is, it's the same content and the person who's been taught delivers the same service?
Yeah, I'm glad that you bring that up. Simultaneous interventions have to happen between the private sector, government, and people in the educational industry when it comes to content, and as we like to call it in education, curricula. So outdated curricula is a huge problem. We could even say that it's a problem contributing to our lack of jobs and employers being satisfied and us putting out good value into the market. One primary thing to come up with solutions, is for us not to be working in silos. And when it comes to content, I think we underestimate how much the private sector can contribute to content. For a curriculum to be assessed and approved by the government takes a long while. I think they only just after a couple of years, entered the new updated secondary curriculum for Uganda, and that's taking a while because there's also a process to, teach teachers. But that new curriculum. But what NCDC is doing is it's encouraging private sector people, curriculum designers, ER Solutions, TESA, and so on, to add informal but vocational curriculums into the national curriculum. So, for example, there's absolutely no reason why there's no good reason why there's no business education for primary students and business education for secondary students. Like there's a book, right, teaching value, teaching what is a product, teaching students business ideas like, make juice and sell it on the side of the road to someone who's in P1. So that by the time they're in P7, by the time they're in S2, they already are exchanging value for value. So as regards to content, one of the key easiest solutions is for the private sector to start contributing curriculums, ideas, solutions, learning, skilling to our national curriculum to update it.
All right, thank you. I'm going to get to Richard after the break, and you talk about the curriculum because government just launched a new curriculum and it's in the process, and we'll talk about what the private sector can do. But first, let's take a break, and when we get back, we continue the conversation on hybrid learning. EdTech Mondays Uganda is supported by the MasterCard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning and the Innovation Village. Thank you so much for staying with us on EdTech Monday. We're talking about hybrid learning in Africa, and just before we took the break, we were coming to you, Richard, to speak about the curriculum that we have and how that curriculum can enable hybrid learning. What are the challenges you found with deploying the new curriculum, and how can the private sector help you solve some of those challenges?
The new curriculum, which they have called the competence-based curriculum, I think is a good piece of work that has been done by the NCDC. And in there, for me as an ICT person, I've seen ICT being mainstream in all subjects. Now that speaks to bridging the digital skills gap that we have had. Even, we've had students at university who have limited skills in application and use of ICT. So that for me is something that should try to address the hybrid learning challenges. And by the way, I didn't mention, before I went to where I am, agriculture, I was working with a startup ecosystem. And in here, we had a number of solutions that we were working on. Now I can tell you, there is something fundamental that I believe we should have addressed way back, and that touches on the issue of having data about our educational system. We've talked about a lot of dropouts. Where do these people go? What are they doing? What are the drivers? We don't have this data. Fortunately, the ministry recently, and working with us at the Ministry of ICT, we developed the Education Management Information System, which is basically addressing this challenge, getting all the data right from the last point at the school level, at the student level, and aggregating this data so that government can be able to get information to and be able to plan well for our education system. So as we look at hybrid learning at the upper end, we need to recognize how the information about the learners, can they be able to provide the basic ICT kind of environment that can even be used by the teachers themselves to run the schools that they are running.
Paula, you have something to say?
Yes, maybe just to add on to that, if schools could have the ICT infrastructure to even deploy a hybrid learning model, then it's good impetus for new curriculums entering into our curriculum to have a multimedia format. So they're not only new books and new texts, but every time NCDC releases a new curriculum, that same curriculum has teachers teaching it on video, audio, text, and aspects of it extracted for USSD use, right? We shouldn't wait for another pandemic or catastrophe or economic breakdown. If ICT infrastructure is there, new curriculums should adopt that kind of model. And maybe another solution that I wanted to propose for our audience to consider is at each tier of learning, from pre-primary to primary to secondary, university, and after, there are different interventions that need to be deployed in terms of a hybrid model. But I would make the case that the most pertinent and urgent one, rather than the lower levels of primary and pre-primary, would be the adult one, because the unemployment problem is the education problem, right? And so if we started to adopt hybrid learning models for adults that already can speak English, that already went through basic education, that are already wired, and if they are upskilled to add value into the market, then the solutions that they create will help the other lower ranks.
Samson, I wanted to bring in, because you already have the solution that government is looking for, which is to use USSD. At least we have basic connectivity on all points of this country where USSD can work.
Yeah.
What would make that solution cheap, cost-effective for government to adopt? What is it that you found as challenges in deploying that solution that government can help you with at scale?
Yeah, thanks so much. First of all, I want to say that the new curriculum I like the new curriculum that NCDC rolled out, because it provides for flexibility to teach, to use the hybrid model. Because in the afternoon, the students learn in the morning, and in the afternoons, they have time to work on hands-on projects. So that can be time that they can, log in online, or like go on USSD or tune in on their radio and listen to a STEM class, or a practical lesson. And then the other point I want to make is that if we want people to embrace hybrid models of learning, then the value should be very clear. What is the value proposition? We can't have it can't be the same as what kids have been used to. In 2016, when we were starting year, we interviewed a school dropout somewhere in Ilira. And when we asked how she dropped out of school, she told us that, one, in her school, her teacher used to tell them not to repeat experiments at home. And she said that if I can't repeat it at home, then why am I studying it? When we don't have what to eat at home. So she decided to drop out of school and use her time to fend for their family. So hybrid models will be embraced if there is value to provide practical skills to young people. So back to your question in terms of challenges, I think every EdTech provider will tell you that the biggest burden on their budget is telecom costs. Telecom costs take up the biggest, part of our budgets. And yet, for us, and I think even for TESA, we don't charge our users, because for year we believe that education is a human right and a public good. Telecom companies don't care. All they care about is money, So if there is a way telecom company, rather government, can ask telecom companies to provide discounts, to provide skills EdTech providers, that will help a lot, and the impact would be phenomenal.
Richard, I'll come to you. I don't agree with Samson that telecom companies don't care, because during the pandemic, what they did is they zero-rated access to basic education services. What is it that you can talk to about the telecom companies to make this solution, which is really effective, deliverable across scale in Uganda?
Now, I can relate with the frustrations of Samson and even Paula. And the ecosystem, basically, we have challenges, huge challenges. Even those who can pay have challenges. It's not about just zero rating. The quality of the internet, the access, is it accessible to all of us, and what are we accessing? We know that even in the rural areas, you don't talk about it in terms of the quality. In the urban areas, even around here, we have quality challenges and also access challenges. So what does that say? That we are not yet there in terms of having good, reliable, quality connectivity in this country. Of course, the telecoms will tell you, when they would listen to their story, they'll also tell you a lot about what brings that cost to be so high. They will talk about the energy challenges, maintaining infrastructure, the telecom infrastructure is, and also, of course, the investment in that area is not something that everybody will want to go into. So there isn't much competition, and you know, the costs of getting in there are so high. So yes, we have challenges, but as government has tried to create an environment that should be attractive. Of course, we have the broadband policy, which was passed a few years ago. It tries to put in place strategies that can help get this industry to function better than it's functioning right now. But of course, it takes time, okay? And even looking at the whole African continent, we may have our challenges here, but I think all other countries on the African continent are having challenges. Others are doing much better than us. We are possibly doing not so well. I wouldn't want to say that we are doing very badly. Yeah. Yes.
Paula, I want to come to you because you're also the innovator around here. Many times, all the circumstances will never align. The challenges will be there, but regardless of the challenges, the solution has to be deployed. So what is it that we can do about hybrid learning that despite the challenges that exist, that it's deployed across scale in Ugandan schools?
Yeah. I think the private sector has a big part. Innovators have a big part to play. As much as there are all of these constraints and resources will always be, minimal in comparison to all of the things that we want to do, we can play a big part. One of the things is, again, as I had mentioned, to tier the different groups of people that need different education and skilling interventions. It really is our view and our belief at TESA to start with the group at the top that can catalyze the most innovation and the most value for the group below them, and so on and so forth. It will be extremely difficult, costly, and take a long time to scale hybrid learning, to scale upskilling across all of the different areas at once. And so out of school youth, those who are literate, those who can use keypad phones, those in technology, I think are the ones that need to be upskilled the most. If we can support the people in the marketplace that need to work, that are able-bodied, that are above the age of 18, to get basic business education, to understand how to create value, turn ideas into something practical that you can sell and that someone else can buy, then I truly believe that those are the ones who are going to catalyze solutions for the people below them.
Samson, what are your parting remarks?
Yeah, I think for me, I want to speak to government again. I think there is a lot that our leaders can do in terms of promoting the use and adoption of EdTech. When government is part of an intervention, it has to succeed, because one, it will be very legitimate, people will trust it, and it will be easier to get buy-in from people, from parents especially. Let me tell you, in 2020, when we were developing air science, we asked the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovations to provide their input, and they made adverts. Two commissioners from the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovations made adverts to encourage parents and young people to participate in air science, as it's in line with government's mandate of promoting innovation among young people, and that helped a lot to bring in enrollment. I think that is the biggest reason we had so many people register, so many students register. Within 1 month, we had already surpassed 10,000 users, and people kept registering. But I think largely because, yes, the course is great, and our lessons are practical and all, but also because government officials were part of it. They asked parents to sign up their children. And so I want to encourage, our leaders to keep doing that, promote EdTech and encourage young people and parents to embrace it. Ask parents to buy phones for their children, for learning, If you don't want to buy a smartphone, at least let them buy keypad phones, because I know internet can also be distracting when it comes to learning and for young people. But buy them keypad phones and let them use USSD to access education.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I guess you wanted to say something.
I did really want to just say one last thing.
Okay.
Government being the biggest spender is a great thing, and definitely they can do a lot to promote education. But I have to disagree with Samson. What we don't want to do is to say that a lot of EdTech interventions should be tied to government. Sure, they're the biggest spender and they're a good implementer, but we want the private sector to start their small pilot interventions on their own. Let them add solutions into the market. Let them upskill people who are creating real practical solutions for our market, and then let government come around them and support them.
And provide an enabling environment,
exactly.
Basically. All right, thank you so much, Paula. And that is really the reason why EdTech Monday exists, to get the private sector and the government to speak to each other about EdTech solutions and make sure that technology and education are available and provided to students across Uganda and across Africa. Of course, EdTech Monday, this is our first episode this year, but EdTech Monday is an initiative of the MasterCard Foundation in partnership with the Innovation Village. Thank you so much, and see you again next month. EdTech Mondays Uganda is supported by the MasterCard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning and the Innovation Village.